What if some of the things you want most in life were never actually your choice? The person whose attention you desperately want, the success you keep chasing, the approval you can't seem to live without, even the version of yourself you're constantly trying to become. You call these things your desires, but what if they were planted in you long before you were old enough to question them? What if you learned what was worth chasing before you ever learned how to ask whether you wanted it? And now, years later, you're calling an old pattern me. So before you ask yourself, what do I want? Stop and ask the question that may completely change the way you see your life. Who taught me to want this? 1. You didn't choose most of what you want. Think about yourself when you were very young, before you knew what success was, before you knew what beauty meant, before you cared about money, status, or what other people thought of you. You were simply living. You were learning. You were watching the people around you and slowly trying to understand the world. Then something started happening. People began teaching you what was important. You noticed what made your parents happy. You noticed what disappointed them. You learned what got you praise. You learned what got you ignored. You learned which things made people proud of you, and you learned which things made people unhappy with you. Without realizing it, you started building an idea of what you needed to be. You learned what felt safe. You learned what made you feel valuable. You learned what made people accept you, and you carried those lessons with you. The strange thing is that children don't usually stop and question these lessons. They simply believe them. If a child is praised every time they achieve something, they may slowly learn, when I succeed, I am loved. If a child is always compared with other children, they may learn, I have to be better than everyone else. If a child only receives attention when they are useful, they may learn, people will care about me when I do something for them. If a child is constantly criticized for making mistakes, they may learn, mistakes are dangerous, I must never fail. The child doesn't sit down and choose these beliefs. They simply enter the mind, and then years pass. The child becomes an adult, but some of those old beliefs are still there. The adult says, I am just ambitious. I hate disappointing people. I need people to respect me. I can't handle failure. I always need to be in control. I don't know why I care so much about what people think. But maybe there is a reason. Maybe some of these feelings began long before you were old enough to understand them. Maybe the adult is still carrying lessons learned by the child. And this is why you should become curious about the things you want. Take someone who spends 20 years trying to build an impressive career. From the outside, it looks like ambition. They work hard, they get promotions, they make more money, people respect them. Everyone tells them they are successful. But one day they finally reach the position they always wanted, and something strange happens. They still don't feel satisfied. They immediately start chasing something else. A bigger house, a better title, more money, more followers, more recognition, more proof that they have made it. Why does this happen? Because maybe the career was never the deepest thing they wanted. Maybe what they really wanted was to feel worthy. Maybe they wanted to prove that they were good enough. Maybe they wanted to reach a place where nobody could look down on them anymore. Maybe they were trying to silence an old feeling inside them that said, you are not enough. So they achieved the goal, but the feeling stayed. And because the feeling stayed, they needed another goal. Then another. Then another. The finish line kept moving because they were not really chasing the achievement. They were chasing what they believed the achievement would make them feel. And this happens in many areas of life. Someone says they want a relationship, but underneath that desire may be a deep need to feel chosen. Someone says they want money, but underneath that desire may be a fear of ever feeling powerless again. Someone wants to look beautiful, but underneath that desire may be the belief that being attractive will finally protect them from rejection. Someone works every hour of the day, but underneath that constant work may be a fear that if they stop, they will feel useless. The desire on the surface may look completely normal, but the reason behind it may be something much deeper. And this is why you should not only ask yourself, "What do I want?" Ask yourself, "Why do I want it?" And then go one step deeper. If I finally got this, what would I feel? Maybe you would feel important. Maybe you would feel safe. Maybe you would feel loved. Maybe you would feel respected. Maybe you would finally feel like you were enough. Then ask one more question. Why do I need that feeling so badly? That question can reveal something you have never noticed before. Because sometimes you are not really chasing the thing. You are chasing the feeling you believe that thing will give you. You want the job because you believe it will finally make you feel successful. You want the relationship because you believe it will finally make you feel wanted. You want the money because you believe it will finally make you feel safe. You want the attention because you believe it will finally make you feel important. But if you need something outside yourself before you allow yourself to feel worthy, safe, or enough, you can spend your entire life chasing. You reach one goal, and another appears. You get one person's approval, and then you need someone else's. You achieve something important, and for a few moments you feel good. Then the feeling disappears, and you start running again. This is how people can spend years building a life that looks successful from the outside, while feeling empty on the inside. They keep asking, "What else do I need?" when the better question may be, "Why do I believe I need this to be okay?" So don't assume that every strong desire is telling you the truth. A strong desire is not automatically a true desire. Sometimes it is simply an old lesson coming back. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is the need for approval. Sometimes it is a belief you learned when you were too young to question it. And sometimes, yes, the desire really is yours, but you will never know until you examine it. So the next time you strongly want something, don't immediately chase it. Pause for a moment. Look at it. Ask where it came from. Ask what you believe it will give you. Ask what you think it will prove about you. And ask yourself, if nobody could see me doing this, would I still want it? That question can be incredibly powerful, because some desires disappear when there is no audience, and some remain. The ones that remain may be closer to what you genuinely care about. You may discover that you don't actually want to impress everyone. You want meaningful work. You don't need everyone to admire you. You want peace. You don't need to prove that you are better than someone else. You simply want to become better than the person you used to be. That is a very different kind of desire. So remember this. You do not have to reject everything you want. You simply need to understand it. Don't fight your desires. Don't blindly obey them either. Listen to them. Question them. Understand where they came from. Some will fall away. Some will change, and some will remain. And the ones that remain after all the questioning may finally be the ones that truly belong to you, because the goal is not to stop wanting. The goal is to stop living automatically. The goal is to know the difference between a desire that comes from who you are and a desire that was quietly handed to you by your past. And that difference can change the entire direction of your life, too. Your past is still making decisions for you. There are moments in your life when you think you are reacting to what is happening right now. Someone says something, someone doesn't reply, someone looks at you differently, you receive a short message, you make a small mistake. Nothing huge has happened. And yet suddenly, something inside you changes. Your heart starts beating faster. Your mind begins creating stories. You feel angry. You feel rejected. You feel afraid. You feel like you need to fix something immediately. And you may think, why am I reacting like this? Sometimes the answer is not in the moment you are living. Sometimes the answer is somewhere behind you. Your past can continue influencing you long after the event itself is over, but it does not always return as a clear memory. You may not remember the exact moment when you learned to fear rejection. You may not remember when you first decided that mistakes were dangerous. You may not remember when you started believing that people would leave if you disappointed them. You may simply feel the reaction. That is how the past often survives. It becomes a feeling. It becomes a habit. It becomes a way of thinking. It becomes a quick reaction that feels so natural that you stop questioning it. Imagine someone sends you a message that simply says, "We need to talk." That's all. 4 words. But suddenly your mind starts racing. What happened? Are they angry? Did I do something wrong? Are they going to leave? You haven't been told anything bad, but your mind has already created a problem. Why? Because the message may have touched an old fear. Maybe you have experienced sudden rejection before. Maybe you have been blamed for things you didn't do. Maybe you grew up around unpredictable reactions. Maybe your mind learned that uncertainty means danger. So now, when something feels uncertain, your body reacts before you have time to think clearly. This is important to understand. Your reaction can be real without your interpretation being correct. You can genuinely feel afraid, but that does not automatically mean something bad is happening. You can genuinely feel rejected, but that does not mean someone has rejected you. You can genuinely feel threatened, but that does not mean you are actually in danger. The feeling is real. The story attached to the feeling may not be. This is where many people get trapped. They feel something strongly, so they believe the feeling must be telling them the truth. But feelings are not always facts. Sometimes feelings are old alarms, and an old alarm can go off even when the danger is no longer there. Think about someone who grew up being criticized for every mistake. As an adult, their manager gives them a small correction at work. The manager may simply be helping them improve, but the person doesn't hear it that way. Inside they hear, "I am failing. I am not good enough. They are disappointed in me. I am going to lose everything." The manager may have said one simple sentence, but the person's past added 10 more. This is what old patterns do. They take something happening now and connect it to something that happened before. Suddenly you are not only dealing with today, you are carrying yesterday into today. And sometimes you are carrying years of yesterday into one small moment. This is why certain situations affect you much more than others. You may notice that one particular type of criticism hurts more than everything else. One particular kind of rejection stays in your mind for days. One type of silence makes you anxious. One kind of person brings out a version of you that you don't even recognize. Pay attention to those moments. They are clues. They can show you where your old patterns are still active. Instead of saying, "I am just like this," become curious. Ask, "Why does this affect me so much? What does this remind me of? When have I felt this way before? What am I afraid is going to happen?" Those questions create space between you and the reaction, and that space matters. Because when you understand where a reaction comes from, you don't have to be controlled by it in the same way. You can begin saying, "I know why this feels familiar. I know why my mind is reacting, but this is not necessarily the same situation." That last part is important. The present is not the past. The person in front of you is not automatically the person who hurt you before. A small mistake today does not mean you are the failure you once feared becoming. Someone being busy does not automatically mean they are abandoning you. Someone disagreeing with you does not automatically mean they don't respect you. Someone being disappointed does not mean you have lost their love. Your mind may connect these things because it learned to, but you can learn to separate them. And this is one of the most important skills you can develop. Learn to notice when your reaction is bigger than the event. If something small happens and your emotional response is enormous, don't immediately judge yourself. Get curious. Something may be underneath it. Maybe you are not angry about what happened today. Maybe today's event simply touched an old wound. Maybe you are not afraid of this person. Maybe you are afraid of what their behavior reminds you of. Maybe you are not desperate for this particular person's attention. Maybe you are terrified of feeling unwanted again. Understanding this changes the question. Instead of asking, "How do I make this person act differently?" you may begin asking, "Why does their behavior have so much power over me?" That is a much deeper question, because you cannot control every person around you. You cannot make everyone understand you. You cannot make everyone stay. You cannot stop people from criticizing you. You cannot prevent disappointment. You cannot control every change that happens in your life. But you can learn to understand what those things activate inside you. And once you understand that, you become less dependent on the outside world to keep you emotionally stable. You stop needing every situation to go exactly the way you want. You become more capable of staying grounded when something unexpected happens. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop letting every event control your identity. You can hear criticism and think about it without immediately believing you are worthless. You can experience rejection without deciding that nobody will ever love you. You can feel jealousy without allowing it to control your behavior. You can feel lonely without immediately running towards someone who is wrong for you. You can feel fear without treating fear as a command. This is how you begin separating your past from your present. And there is something else you need to understand. You should not hate the patterns you discover. Some of them may have protected you once. Maybe you learned to stay quiet because speaking up used to cause problems. Maybe you learned to please people because it helped you avoid conflict. Maybe you learned to work constantly because achievement brought you attention. Maybe you learned not to trust anyone because trusting the wrong person once hurt deeply. These patterns did not appear for no reason. They were responses to experiences. But something that helped you survive one chapter may not be necessary in the next. A child may need to stay quiet in an unsafe environment. An adult may need to learn how to speak. A child may need approval to feel secure. An adult may need to learn that their worth does not depend on everyone's approval. A child may believe mistakes are dangerous. An adult can learn that mistakes are simply part of learning. The goal is not to blame the past. The goal is to stop letting the past secretly run the present, because your past may explain why you react a certain way. But it does not have to decide what you do next. That is where your power begins to return. So the next time you have a strong reaction, don't immediately act. Pause. Take a breath. Look at what is happening inside you. Ask, is this really about what is happening right now? Or is something older being touched? Maybe the answer will surprise you. Maybe you will realize that the person in front of you is not the real reason you are hurting. Maybe the real reason is an old belief that says, "I am not enough. They will leave. I must prove myself. I cannot make mistakes. I need everyone to approve of me." Once you can hear those old beliefs, you can begin questioning them. And once you question them, they become less powerful. You don't have to erase your past. You don't have to forget what happened. You simply need to stop carrying every old conclusion into every new situation, because your past is part of your story. But it does not have to remain the author of every decision you make. And perhaps that is the beginning of real freedom, not becoming someone who never gets triggered, but becoming someone who notices the trigger before it becomes a decision. Someone who can say, "This feeling is familiar. This reaction is old. This fear may have a history, but I am here now." And because you are here now, you have something the younger version of you did not always have. You can pause, you can understand, you can choose. Your past may still speak, but it no longer has to speak for you. 3. The voice you call me may not be you. There is a voice inside your mind that talks to you all day. Sometimes it encourages you. Sometimes it worries you. Sometimes it tells you to be careful. Sometimes it tells you to prove yourself. Sometimes it tells you that you are behind. Sometimes it tells you that someone doesn't like you. Sometimes it tells you that you need to do something right now. And because that voice is inside your own head, you naturally assume it is you. You think, this is what I think, this is what I believe, this is who I am. But stop for a moment. If you can hear your thoughts, can you really be every thought you hear? Think about the last time you had a thought you didn't agree with. Maybe you suddenly became angry. Maybe you imagined saying something cruel. Maybe you felt jealous. Maybe you wanted to do something you knew wasn't good for you. The thought appeared, but you didn't necessarily choose it. It simply arrived. And this is something most people never learn to understand. A thought can appear inside your mind without being a command. A feeling can appear inside your body without being a fact. A desire can appear inside you without being something you must follow. But most of the time, we don't create enough space between these things. The thought appears. We believe it. The feeling appears. We act from it. The desire appears. We obey it. And because everything happens so quickly, we never notice that there was another option. Imagine you are scrolling through your phone. You see someone you know living a life that looks better than yours. Maybe they are traveling. Maybe they bought a new car. Maybe they got married. Maybe they received a promotion. You suddenly feel something inside you. I am falling behind. That sentence appears in your mind, and immediately you believe it. You start comparing your life. You start questioning yourself. You start feeling unhappy with things that were perfectly fine 5 minutes earlier. But look closely. What actually happened? You saw a picture. Then your mind created a story. Then you believed the story. Then your emotions reacted to the story. The picture itself did not say you were behind. Your mind said it. And this happens constantly. Someone doesn't reply to your message. Your mind says, they don't care about me. Someone gives you criticism. Your mind says, they don't respect me. Someone succeeds. Your mind says, I'm not good enough. Someone disagrees with you. Your mind says, I need to prove them wrong. The thought appears so quickly that you don't separate yourself from it. You become the thought. And once you become the thought, you start behaving as if it is true. This is why learning to observe your mind is so powerful. Instead of saying, they don't like me, you can say, I am having the thought that they don't like me. Instead of, I am a failure, you can say, I am feeling like a failure right now. Instead of, I need their attention, you can say, I notice that I strongly want their attention. The words may seem like a small change, but mentally they create distance. And distance gives you room to think. You are no longer completely inside the thought. You are watching it. That is a very different position. Think of your mind like a room where many voices enter. Some voices come from your past. Some come from fear. Some come from things other people told you. Some come from your habits. Some come from your desires. And some come from genuine wisdom. The mistake is thinking that every voice deserves equal trust. It doesn't. Just because your mind says something does not mean it is true. Your mind can remember something incorrectly. It can imagine the worst. It can create problems that don't exist. It can make small things feel enormous. It can turn one person's opinion into a judgment about your entire worth. And it can convince you that an old fear is a present fact. This is why you need to become careful with the sentence, I am this way. Maybe you are not. Maybe you learned this way of reacting. Maybe you developed this habit. Maybe you became this way because something happened to you. That does not mean you must remain this way forever. There is a huge difference between saying, I am an anxious person, and saying, I often experience anxiety. The first sounds like an identity. The second describes an experience. One creates a box. The other leaves the door open. The same is true with anger. Instead of, I am an angry person, you can say, I am experiencing anger. Instead of, I am insecure, you can say, I am experiencing insecurity. Instead of, I am weak, you can say, I am feeling weak right now. These small changes remind you that what you experience is not necessarily what you are. And this matters because emotions change, thoughts change, desires change. Even the strongest feelings eventually move. If you have ever been extremely angry, you know this. In the moment, anger can feel permanent. You may think, I will never forgive them. I have to say something. They need to understand what they did. Then you sleep, you wake up, and the intensity is different. The situation may look completely different. The feeling was real, but it was temporary. The same is true with fear. When fear is strong, your mind tells you that you must act immediately, but fear often wants one thing above everything else: relief. And sometimes the action that gives you immediate relief creates a bigger problem later. You feel anxious, so you send the message. You feel insecure, so you ask for reassurance. You feel lonely, so you return to someone who hurts you. You feel angry, so you respond immediately. You feel uncomfortable, so you distract yourself. You feel uncertain, so you make a rushed decision. The mind says, do something now. But sometimes the wisest thing you can do is nothing. Wait. Let the emotion move. Let the thought become less intense. Let yourself see what remains after the first reaction passes. This is not weakness, it is strength. Because anyone can obey an impulse. It takes awareness to pause. And this brings us to a question that can completely change the way you live. What if I don't have to believe everything I think? Think about how freeing that is. A thought says you are behind. You don't have to believe it. A thought says everyone is judging you. You don't have to believe it. A thought says you must prove yourself. You don't have to believe it. A thought says you need this person's approval. You don't have to believe it. A thought says you cannot handle uncertainty. You don't have to believe it. You can simply notice, there is that thought again, and then continue with your life. This is where you begin separating your deeper self from the noise in your mind. You start becoming less reactive. You don't need to win every argument inside your head. You don't need to answer every thought. You don't need to solve every feeling. Some thoughts can simply pass. Some emotions can simply be felt. Some desires can simply be noticed. And some impulses can simply be ignored. This does not mean you should distrust yourself. It means you should understand yourself better. There is a difference. You are not trying to silence your mind. You are learning how to listen without obeying everything you hear. And eventually, you begin to notice something very interesting. The loudest thoughts are not always the most important. Fear can be loud. Ego can be loud. Insecurity can be loud. Comparison can be loud. But genuine clarity can be quiet. It may not shout at you. It may simply say, this isn't right for me. I'm done chasing this. I don't need to prove anything. I want a simpler life. I care about this. I don't want that anymore. There is no panic in these thoughts, no desperation, no need to convince anyone. They simply feel clear. And the more you create space in your mind, the easier it becomes to recognize the difference. You begin seeing that some thoughts are trying to protect you. Some are trying to impress people. Some are trying to avoid discomfort. Some are repeating old beliefs, and some are actually coming from what matters to you. You don't need to become perfect at knowing the difference. You simply need to start looking. The next time a strong thought appears, don't immediately say, this is me. Try saying, I notice this thought. Then ask, is it true? Where did it come from? Is it helping me? Would I still believe this if I were calm? Am I choosing this, or am I reacting? Those questions create a small space, and inside that small space, something powerful happens. You remember that you can choose. You don't have to become your anger. You don't have to become your fear. You don't have to become your insecurity. You don't have to become your past. And you don't have to become every desire that appears inside you. You can experience all of these things and still remain aware of them. That is the beginning of inner freedom, because the goal is not to have a mind that never produces negative thoughts. The goal is to become someone who doesn't automatically follow every thought the mind produces. Your mind will speak. Let it speak. Your emotions will rise. Let them rise. Your desires will appear. Notice them. But before you give any of them control over your life, pause, listen, question, then choose. Because the voice inside your head may be loud, it may be familiar, it may have been speaking for years, but that does not automatically make it your deepest truth. Sometimes the voice you have been calling me is simply a collection of old fears, old habits, old expectations, and old stories. And once you realize that, you don't need to fight the voice. You simply stop handing it the keys. You remain the one who listens. You remain the one who watches. And most importantly, you remain the one who chooses. 4. The moment you obey is where you lose your freedom. You can understand your past. You can recognize your patterns. You can notice your thoughts. But there is one moment that matters more than all of that. The moment when you decide what to do next. Because a thought by itself does not control your life. A feeling by itself does not control your life. A desire by itself does not control your life. The real power comes from what happens after they appear. You feel angry. Then what? You feel afraid. Then what? You want someone's attention. Then what? You feel like proving yourself. Then what? That small moment between the feeling and your action is where your freedom lives. Most people don't notice that moment. The feeling appears and they immediately act. Someone says something disrespectful. Anger rises. They respond. Someone doesn't reply. Anxiety rises. They send another message. They feel lonely. They call someone they already know is bad for them. They feel insecure. They start comparing themselves to everyone around them. They feel like they are falling behind. They work harder, even when they are exhausted. The pattern is simple. Something happens inside. An urge appears. They obey. And because the action happens so quickly, they think, I had no choice. But they did. The choice was simply too small to notice. It may have been one breath, 5 seconds, 10 minutes, one night. But that small pause was there. And learning to find that pause can change your life. Think about anger. Someone insults you. Your body reacts before you can think clearly. Your heart beats faster. Your face becomes hot. Your mind immediately creates an answer. You know exactly what you want to say, and part of you feels that you have to say it. But what if you wait? What if you don't send the message? What if you don't answer immediately? What if you allow the anger to be there without giving it an action? A few minutes later, something changes. The emotion may still be there, but it is not as strong. You can think more clearly. You can see more than one option. Maybe you still need to respond, but now you can choose how. That is the difference between reacting and responding. Reaction happens quickly. Response requires awareness, and this difference matters far beyond anger. Think about anxiety. You feel uncertain about someone's feelings toward you. Your mind says, ask them, check again, make sure everything is okay, don't let them leave. You feel the urge to get reassurance immediately. If you obey, you may feel better for a few minutes, but then the anxiety returns, so you ask again and again. Eventually you become dependent on other people's responses to feel calm. But imagine doing something different. You feel the anxiety, you notice the urge, and you don't immediately act. You tell yourself, I am uncomfortable right now, but I don't have to fix this feeling immediately. That sentence is powerful, because you are teaching yourself that discomfort is survivable. You don't have to run from every uncomfortable emotion. You don't have to solve every uncertainty. You don't have to make every person reassure you. You can allow a feeling to exist without obeying it. This is where real strength begins. Not when you stop feeling fear, but when fear can be present and you can still choose. Not when you stop feeling insecure, but when insecurity appears and you don't let it decide your behavior. Not when you stop wanting approval, but when you notice that need and refuse to build your entire life around it. The goal is not to control every emotion. That is impossible. The goal is to control what you do with the emotion. Your mind may say, check your phone. You can wait. Your mind may say, send that message. You can wait. Your mind may say, prove yourself. You can wait. Your mind may say, buy this right now. You can wait. Your mind may say, quit everything. You can wait. Waiting does not mean you will never act. It means the first impulse does not automatically get the final decision. That is a huge difference, because sometimes the first impulse is useful, and sometimes it is simply emotional noise. You won't always know which one it is immediately. That is why the pause matters. The pause gives you time to find out. This is especially important when the decision could affect your future. Don't make permanent decisions during temporary emotional storms. Don't end a relationship in the middle of extreme anger. Don't make major life decisions because you had one terrible day. Don't send words you cannot take back because you wanted relief for 5 minutes. Don't destroy something meaningful simply because your emotions became loud. Give yourself time. Let the emotions settle, then decide. This does not mean ignoring problems. It means solving problems from a clearer mind. There is another powerful question you can ask whenever you feel a strong urge. What am I trying to make this feeling do? Maybe you are angry because you want someone to understand that they hurt you. Maybe you are chasing someone's attention because you want to stop feeling rejected. Maybe you want to spend money because you want to escape boredom. Maybe you want to quit because you want the discomfort to end. Maybe you want to prove yourself because you want someone to regret underestimating you. Look at what is happening. The action is often not the real goal. The feeling is trying to lead you toward relief. And relief can be very convincing. But what makes you feel better right now is not always what makes your life better later. Sending the angry message may feel good for 5 minutes. Then you have to live with it. Checking someone's profile may calm you for a moment. Then you want to check again. Buying something may make you excited for an hour. Then the emptiness returns. Chasing someone may give you temporary attention. Then the same insecurity returns when they become distant again. This is how a pattern becomes stronger. You obey the impulse. The impulse gives you temporary relief. Your brain learns that action helped. Then the same feeling appears again, and the cycle repeats. But when you pause instead, you begin teaching yourself something new. I can feel this without immediately fixing it. I can be uncertain and still be okay. I can be rejected and still respect myself. I can be angry and still remain calm. I can want something and still decide not to chase it. That is freedom. And freedom is not always comfortable. Sometimes freedom feels uncomfortable at first because you are doing something different from what your old pattern expects. Imagine you have spent years saying yes to everyone. The first time you say no, you may feel guilty. You may wonder whether you were selfish. You may want to explain yourself for 20 minutes. But maybe nothing terrible happened. Maybe the other person was disappointed, and you survived. Now your mind has learned something new. Someone can be unhappy with me, and I can still be okay. That is freedom. Or imagine you have always chased people who pull away. The first time you stop chasing, you may feel an enormous amount of anxiety. Your mind may scream, go back, send another message, make sure they still care. But you wait, the feeling rises, then it falls, and you discover something important. You did not need to obey it. The feeling passed. You remained. That experience teaches you more than any motivational quote ever could. You learn through experience that emotions are temporary. They rise, they peak, they change. And you don't have to build your life around every emotion that visits you. This is why the pause is so powerful. It turns an automatic reaction into a conscious decision, and the more often you practice it, the easier it becomes. At first, you may only pause after you have already reacted. Then you begin noticing the reaction while it is happening. Eventually, you notice the urge before you act. And that is where your freedom becomes stronger. You begin catching yourself. You feel the anger. You notice it. You feel the desire to respond. You pause. You ask, what will this action create tomorrow? That one question can save you from many regrets, because your emotions live in the present, but your decisions create the future. Your mind may want immediate relief. Your wiser self needs to consider what happens next. So before you obey an impulse, ask, will this help me tomorrow? Will I respect this decision later? Am I doing this because I truly want it, or because I want this feeling to stop? Those questions create a bridge between who you are right now and who you are becoming. And slowly, you begin to understand something very important. You do not need to win against your mind. You need to stop letting your mind make every decision automatically. Your anger can sit beside you without driving. Your fear can sit beside you without driving. Your insecurity can sit beside you without driving. Your desire for approval can sit beside you without driving. You can hear all of them. You can respect that they exist, but you decide where the car goes. That is the difference between having emotions and being controlled by them. So the next time something inside you tells you to act immediately, don't rush. Take one breath, then another. Give yourself a little space. You don't need to know the perfect answer. You simply need enough space to make sure the first impulse isn't making the decision for you. Because the most important moment is not when the emotion appears. It is what you do after it appears. That is where your freedom is tested. And that is where you can begin taking your power back. Every time you pause, instead of reacting, you become a little less controlled by your old patterns. Every time you choose instead of obeying, you become a little more yourself. And eventually, you realize something beautiful. Freedom was never about getting rid of every fear, desire, or emotion. Freedom was about no longer giving them automatic authority over your life. You can feel everything. You can hear everything. You can experience the full storm inside your mind, and still choose. That small space between the impulse and the action may look like nothing, but inside that space is the ability to change your life. 5. Take back the authority you gave away. There comes a point in this journey when you have to ask yourself a very simple question. If your past helped shape your desires, if your experiences shaped your fears, and if your mind can produce thoughts you never consciously chose, then who is going to decide what happens next? This is where everything changes. Because understanding yourself is not enough. You can know why you seek approval. You can understand why criticism hurts you. You can recognize your fear of rejection. You can notice your need to prove yourself. But if you continue letting those patterns make every decision, then awareness becomes nothing more than information. The real change begins when you take your authority back. And taking your authority back does not mean becoming a completely different person. It does not mean destroying your personality. It does not mean becoming fearless. It does not mean never caring what anyone thinks. It means something much simpler. You stop allowing old patterns to automatically decide your next move. Your past can explain you. It does not have to control you. Maybe you learned to say yes because you were afraid of disappointing people. You can understand where that came from. But today, you can still say no. Maybe you learned to hide your feelings because being honest once caused problems. You can understand why you became quiet. But today, you can choose to speak. Maybe you learned to work constantly because achievement made you feel valuable. You can understand why you became so driven. But today, you can rest without believing that rest makes you worthless. Maybe you learned to chase people because losing someone's attention felt unbearable. You can understand that fear, but today you can stop chasing. This is what it means to take your authority back. You don't have to hate the old version of yourself. You don't have to be angry at the person you used to be. That version of you was doing the best it knew how to do with what it understood at the time. Maybe it was trying to protect you. Maybe it was trying to make you lovable. Maybe it was trying to keep you safe. Maybe it was simply trying to survive. So don't look back at your old patterns with shame. Look at them with understanding. You can say, I understand why I became this way. And then you can add, but I don't have to stay this way. That second sentence is powerful, because there is a huge difference between understanding your past and surrendering your future to it. Your childhood may explain why you need approval, but it doesn't mean you need approval forever. Your past rejection may explain why you fear being abandoned, but it doesn't mean every person who becomes distant is leaving you. Your past failures may explain why you are afraid of making mistakes, but they don't mean you must spend your entire life avoiding them. Your experiences shaped your starting point. They do not have to decide your destination. And sometimes taking your authority back looks very ordinary. It can be as simple as saying no without giving a long explanation. It can mean leaving a conversation when you know you are too angry to speak clearly. It can mean not checking someone's profile even though you desperately want to. It can mean allowing someone to misunderstand you. It can mean choosing a career because you actually care about the work instead of because it sounds impressive. It can mean resting without feeling guilty. It can mean admitting that you don't want something anymore. It can mean changing your mind. It can mean walking away from something everyone else told you to keep. These choices may not look dramatic from the outside, but inside they represent something important. You are no longer asking your old patterns for permission, and that is where your life begins to feel like your own. There is another part of this that can feel uncomfortable. When you stop following old patterns, you may not immediately know what you want instead, and that can be frightening. If you have spent your whole life chasing success, what happens when you stop chasing it just to prove yourself? If you have spent your whole life trying to make everyone happy, what happens when you stop? If you have spent your whole life comparing yourself to other people, what happens when you stop looking? At first, there may be silence. You may feel lost. You may think, what do I actually want? And that's okay. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let it be there. Because when the noise becomes quieter, you may finally hear desires that were there all along. Maybe you want a simpler life. Maybe you want meaningful work. Maybe you want more time with people you love. Maybe you want to create something. Maybe you want to learn. Maybe you want peace more than status. Maybe you want freedom more than recognition. Maybe you want a relationship where you can be yourself instead of constantly trying to earn someone's love. These desires can be quieter than the ones created by fear. They don't always demand attention. They don't always come with urgency. They may simply feel right. And this is one of the reasons people struggle to find themselves. They expect their true desires to arrive loudly. But sometimes the things that truly matter to you are very quiet. The need to impress is loud. The need to prove is loud. Fear is loud. Comparison is loud. But genuine clarity can be almost silent. It may simply say, I don't want this anymore. This matters to me. I would still choose this if nobody knew. I don't need to prove anything. I want to live differently. And when you hear that voice, pay attention, because it may be closer to you than all the noise you have been following. This is also why you should not turn self-awareness into another form of self-judgment. You may discover that some of your goals were influenced by other people. That's okay. You may discover that some of your relationships were built around fear. That's okay. You may discover that you have spent years trying to prove something. That's okay. The goal is not to regret the entire past. The goal is to become more conscious from this moment forward. You don't need to rewrite yesterday. You need to make today more honest and tomorrow more conscious. One decision at a time, one pause at a time, one honest question at a time. You can start with something very simple. Before making an important decision, ask yourself, if nobody could see this choice, would I still make it? If the answer is yes, pay attention. If the answer is no, ask why. Maybe you are trying to impress someone. Maybe you are afraid of being judged. Maybe you want to prove that you are successful. Maybe you are trying to make someone regret losing you. Maybe you are trying to become the person you think everyone else wants you to be. And once you see that, you don't have to immediately change everything. Just knowing is powerful, because awareness gives you a choice. You can still choose the same thing, but now you know why, and that makes the choice different. Maybe you still want to become wealthy. That's completely fine. But now you can ask whether you want wealth because you genuinely value what it allows you to create, or because you believe money will finally prove your worth. Maybe you still want a successful career. Good, but now you can pursue it without making your entire identity depend on it. Maybe you still want love. Beautiful. But now you can seek love without begging someone to give you the value you refuse to give yourself. Maybe you still want recognition. That's human. But now you can enjoy recognition without needing it to feel alive. This is what conscious living looks like. You don't have to remove every human desire. You simply stop letting those desires own you. And eventually, something changes inside. You become less desperate. You become less reactive. You become less interested in proving. You become more comfortable with your own choices. You can walk away without needing everyone to agree. You can stay without needing everyone to approve. You can succeed without making others feel small. You can fail without believing you are worthless. You can be misunderstood without immediately defending yourself. You can be alone without believing you have been abandoned. You can receive criticism without letting it define you. You can receive praise without becoming dependent on it. That is a different kind of strength. It is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It simply comes from knowing that you are no longer handing your entire identity to whatever happens around you. And perhaps this is the deepest meaning of becoming yourself. You don't become yourself by creating a perfect new identity. You become yourself by noticing what was never really yours. The fear that was handed to you. The expectations that were handed to you. The definition of success that was handed to you. The belief that you must impress everyone. The belief that you must never fail. The belief that you must always be useful. The belief that you must always be chosen. The belief that you must always prove your value. You begin putting those things down, not all at once, slowly. And every time you put one down, you have a little more space to hear yourself. This is why your life may begin changing in ways other people don't understand. You may stop chasing something everyone thought you wanted. You may become less interested in certain conversations. You may stop explaining yourself. You may choose a different path. You may become comfortable with being misunderstood. And people may ask, what happened to you? Maybe nothing happened to you. Maybe something finally happened for you. You became conscious. You started asking questions. You stopped automatically obeying every old instruction living inside your mind. You started making choices from awareness instead of fear, and that is a quiet transformation. Nobody may notice it immediately, but you will. You will notice that certain things no longer control your mood. You will notice that you don't need the same approval. You will notice that rejection hurts, but it doesn't destroy you. You will notice that you can hear criticism without immediately attacking yourself. You will notice that you can feel fear without running. You will notice that you can want something without desperately chasing it. And perhaps most importantly, you will notice that your decisions begin to feel more like yours. That is the real goal. Not to become someone who wants nothing, not to become someone who never feels pain, not to become someone who is perfectly calm all the time. Become someone who knows what is happening inside them, someone who can recognize the old pattern, someone who can pause, someone who can question, someone who can choose, because your past may have written the first draft of your life, but it does not have to write the ending. The world may have taught you what to chase, but you are allowed to decide what is worth chasing now. Other people may have taught you what makes someone valuable, but you are allowed to question that definition. Your mind may continue producing old thoughts. Let it. You don't have to obey all of them. Your emotions may continue rising. Let them. You don't have to let all of them make decisions. Your desires may continue appearing. Listen to them, understand them, then decide, and perhaps one day you will look back and realize something beautiful. You didn't become a different person. You became less controlled by fear, less controlled by approval, less controlled by comparison, less controlled by old wounds, less controlled by the need to prove. And because you became less controlled, you finally became more available to your own life. So take your authority back. Not through force, not through anger, not by fighting yourself. Take it back through awareness, through patience, through honest questions, through the courage to pause, through the willingness to choose differently. And the next time an old voice tells you who you are, listen carefully. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to destroy it. Just ask, is that really me? And if the answer is no, let it pass. Because your past can speak. Your fears can speak. Your conditioning can speak. The world can speak. But they do not get the final word. You do. And perhaps that is where your real life begins. Maybe the most important thing you take away from this video is not another lesson. Maybe it is a question. The next time you desperately want something, stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this really what I want? Or is this what I was taught to want? Because sometimes the life you are chasing was never truly chosen by you. It was built from old fears, old expectations, old wounds, and the need to be accepted. But the moment you become aware of that, something changes. You no longer have to obey every thought. You no longer have to chase every desire. You no longer have to prove your worth to everyone around you. You can pause. You can question. You can choose. And perhaps becoming yourself was never about creating a completely new person. Perhaps it was about finally letting go of everything that was never really you. So before you leave, remember this. Not every voice inside you deserves your obedience. And not everything you want deserves your life. Choose carefully, because your life becomes the result of whatever you repeatedly choose to follow. If this video made you question something you have never questioned before, don't let that thought disappear. Subscribe to the channel, because the next video goes even deeper into the hidden patterns that quietly shape the way you think, choose, love, and live. And if you know someone who is constantly chasing, constantly proving, or constantly trying to become enough for everyone else, send this video to them. Maybe they don't need another answer. Maybe they just need someone to ask them the right question. Is this really you?